Hey, Legal Rebels, this is Tom Martin. I'm the founder of LawDroid, and this is my podcast, LawDroid Manifesto, where I interview legal innovators about how they do what they do. In this episode, I interview Brittany Hernandez, head of legal innovation at Gavel, where she has leveraged her law school, law enforcement, and film school experience to educate lawyers about how they can live better lives through automation.
Hey there, everybody. Thank you so much for coming to LawDroid Manifesto, our podcast with Brittany Hernandez today. I'm so excited to have her as our guest. She is a force of nature, really. She's involved in legal innovation at all levels and has a really interesting background that's brought her here. So she has just been promoted about, I think, 3 weeks ago to head of legal innovation at Gavel. And Brittany, with that, I'd like to introduce you and tell us a little bit more about your background.
It's mine. So I am a lawyer and I'm from California, but I've been living in London for the past 3.5 years. So after law school, I pursued a master's degree in international film business. So it's been a really fun journey to where I am now, and I'm really excited to go over each different piece in turn.
I saw that you have a background with film school,
Mm-hmm.
um, and I saw London. I wasn't sure if you had lived there or if you were still in California, because I know that um, you also have a background with the Coast Guard
Mm-hmm.
and many different interests and experiences there that I'd like to get into. But the first one, where I'd like to go back a little bit to the beginning, is your family. Like, you come from a very creative family. Am I right?
Yes, correct. Yes. My mom is an artist. My dad and my mom had a comic book back in the 90s called Fender. So I've been around all my brothers are artists. So I'm around artists, and then I'm the one who's like, I'll make collages.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm definitely around a very creative family. So I feel like that has kind of really seeped into who I am as a person as well, even if it doesn't manifest in the same way.
Okay. So you graduated from law school in 2020, right?
Correct. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so you got a bachelor's in history
Mm-hmm.
from UCSD, and then after that you went to film school, right?
So actually, so it was a little bit of a different order, but
Okay.
correct in the overall sense. So I went to UCSD and did get a bachelor's degree in history with a minor in linguistics. And then I went into the military in order to pay for law school. And then because I was using the GI Bill and had a little bit left over after law school, because I both graduated early and it's already a little bit shorter, I still had almost a full year's worth of free tuition. So I ended up getting the master's degree after law school. So that's why I was living in London for the past 3.5 years and only just moved back a month ago to California.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's what part of London, by the way?
My place is still in Notting Hill. I still technically have a lease there, but I'm going to be going back for May to July.
I mean, Notting Hill is a very shishy, nice area of London. So,
Very
um,
beautiful.
and yeah, just to point out that we will both be speaking at the Future Law Conference in Tallinn,
Yes.
Estonia. And I've never been there before. Have you?
I have. I was there last year and it was so much fun. It's a great conference. And part of the reason is that it's a little bit smaller than some of the massive legal geeks, where it's thousands of people, or like CleoCon, where there's thousands of people running around. And I felt like with this one, because it's, a little bit smaller, it makes it to where you're able to have a lot of really quality conversations. And the content is very good. And they kind of break it up between sort of keynotes and workshops and panels. So you can
Mhm.
kind of dip away and do a workshop, or you can come back into the main stage. And so and they treat their speakers very well. So you will see that.
Ooh, cool. I'm looking forward to that.
Yes. We get special lunches, special dinners. We're like VIPs.
Ooh.
It'll be
Um,
fun.
so going back to your education a little bit. So
Mm-hmm.
have this influence from your family in terms of having a creative, um, creative point of view.
Mhm.
And then after university, you go to law school. Was law school in the cards, or was it something that you wanted to do for a while, or was it something that came up because, hey, I have these skills, but I want to get something more practical to make money after I
Right.
graduate?
That is a great question. And the answer is I wanted to be an FBI agent, actually. It
Wow.
seems strange because my personality just really seems different than maybe what you would see as a stereotypical FBI agent. But I will admit that I was highly influenced by my TV shows as a youth, where I was watching Alias and Fringe and all the different things. And I'm like, I want to be in the CIA. Like, I want to be in the FBI. Like, I want to be this person who just kicks down doors. So for about 10 years, my goal was to be in the FBI. And every action that I took was in order to achieve that result. And what ended up happening is one of the tracks that you can go into the FBI under is a law track. So I figured I can go on this path. And if I decide later that I don't want to be an FBI agent anymore, then I could still be a lawyer and I would still be good at that and so on. And so being a lawyer was like a backup plan to being in law enforcement. And so I did a lot of different things around law enforcement. When I was 16, I was doing, explored with the sheriff's department, doing ride-alongs with police officers. And so I was very interested in sort of justice and law enforcement and things like that. So my whole goal was to go into the FBI, and I only kind of went into law school to become that type of person who could be an FBI agent. And so kind of going backwards, when I was in the military, it was just to pay for law school with the GI Bill. So that was kind of the whole purpose of me. Obviously, I'm patriotic and I wanted to serve and all those things. But from a practical perspective, I don't come from talking about my family. Like, they've really grown from where they were when they first got married, but they got married when they were 19. They had 4 kids before they were 30. So we grew up in an environment where we didn't have tons and tons of money to help me go to college and law school and all the things. So I had to pay for it myself. And so this was one way that I could pay for law school to become an FBI agent, right? So that's kind of the flow of my history. And while I was in the military, I was a boatswain's mate, second class petty officer. Even though I could have applied multiple times to be an officer, it was going to push out my plan by a couple of years because I would have to keep reapplying. So I just said the whole purpose is to get the GI Bill, so I can do that as an enlisted person. I did that. Originally, I was going to do more of the law enforcement role, but I was convinced by someone that I was a mentor to become a boatswain's mate, where you got to do a little bit of both. You could drive the boats and be in charge of the boat, but also you could do law enforcement as well. And that was very good advice. But
Yeah,
I know this is a long story.
that's
But
fine.
from my experience being in the military, which I'm very grateful for, it gave me the rest of my education. My tuition was covered for law school. My tuition was covered for my master's degree. I was able to buy a home when I was 26 years old in Alaska. I got to live in Puerto Rico. I got to do all these amazing things. But it did teach me that I was not very interested in being a government employee for a long time. so so I ended up going to law school and deciding that I would be a lawyer and not continue to pursue the FBI law enforcement route.
So when you were in the Coast Guard, you were stationed in San Juan, right, in Puerto
Yes.
Rico,
Hmm.
and also in Alaska. Like, um,
Very different places.
yeah. So tell me a little bit more about that. What's a couple of experiences
Hmm.
that you had? And you mentioned something about law enforcement on that.
Hmm.
Like,
Yes.
what's something that you remember from that experience?
Yeah, great question too. So when I was in Puerto Rico, what I remember was how it works is essentially when you're enlisted, you go to boot camp and then you are given sort of a place to go until you can go to what's called A school. So my first billet, you could say, was as a non-re or a seaman, you could say, in Puerto Rico. And so it means that you're not doing your real job yet. You're just sort of like helping a unit until you can go to school for what you're going to be doing. So I was in Puerto Rico at an aids to navigation unit. And so that type of unit is very interesting because they do things like they make sure buoys are in the right place. They make sure that they're like clean and like well maintained. They also do things like make sure that lighthouses are working. So I actually got to go up into a lighthouse in Puerto Rico and help like clean the light and like clean the bugs out and sort of like make sure that there's like a solar sensor that makes like when sunset happens, it turns on the light and that kind of thing. So I would go up with an electrician to help him make sure that the light was working and the sensor was working. So that was kind of an amazing experience. And I still have some pictures where you're just up on this lighthouse and you just get to see out over the entire beautiful Puerto Rico. And actually, my family is from Puerto Rico. My dad's side of the family is all Puerto Rican. So I have history there. I actually got to meet family members that I've never met before while I was there.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so that was one of my experiences in Puerto Rico. And in Alaska, there was definitely a case where it was very scary because I'm the one in charge of the boat and I have, a crew of people who I'm in charge of them and their lives. And we had massive waves and we're trying to, it was like a 14-hour mission. And, what happens a lot in Alaska is that fishermen will go out and then won't have enough fuel. And so they'll get stuck somewhere and then they'll drift into something and then they're in danger. And so they need to call us. So we were kind of going out to help someone and we needed to kind of tow them out and take them over to a safe place. But that was a pretty intense mission because just the waves can get very big and it was dark. And so you just sort of have to trust your crew and trust yourself and trust your training. And then from there, just have that kind of fortitude that you're going to make it to your destination no matter what. And you're going to make sure that everybody's there safely. So I would say that one thing that I've learned from being in the military is that there are real life and death scenarios, and then there's everything else. And so everything else, you don't have to worry about it as much. Like it will be okay. So if your life is not actually in danger, you can just be calm. So I feel like that's been something that I've really taken away is that I've been in real life or death scenarios and I know what that feels like. And so everything else is just I'm just grateful to be here and be alive and we're all safe and okay. And if an email doesn't get sent out until tomorrow, I'm okay,
I think that's a great takeaway for everyone
Mm-hmm.
is especially with doing all the work that we have, the crush of business, all that stuff. I think we lose that perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So having that
Yeah.
perspective is really important because there's stuff that really matters, the
Mm-hmm.
life or death stuff or the family stuff,
Correct.
but everything else will still be there tomorrow.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Your to-do list will still be there. The people that you need to talk to will still be there. I do lose sight of it sometimes, but it is kind of an anchor point for me that this is not life or death. So just relax.
Yeah, and I could see how your life experience with what you were doing, you know, really cemented that. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Thank you.
So wow, and also like something like a takeaway that I get from what you're talking about just so far
Mm-hmm.
is that you really like when you cement a goal in your mind, you're after that. You're after that goal
Absolutely.
and do everything within your power to get there.
Lists upon lists of here are the requirements, and then if we rewind from there, reverse engineer it, how do I get to that place? So, I have to take these 5 steps and I will wait 10 years for that thing to happen. And I think that that's been something that's been really important in my life is that there is that goal, but also I think one of the things that I want to highlight too is that my path evolved and being an FBI agent, even though that was a goal for a very long time and I had done so many things in preparation for that life. And I had to listen to myself and my intuition and sort of my experiences and let them influence me to say, that's maybe not the right path for you in your future based on who you actually are and who you're becoming as a person.
So there's a couple of things I want to get in. There's a lot of stuff for us to cover, but I don't want to let this go, is that your mindset of like having a concrete goal,
Mm-hmm.
envisioning what that's going to be like, and then having the patience and fortitude to like work towards that goal set. Where does that come from? Is that like one of your parents' personalities that you, or both of them that you took on, or is that something you developed yourself, or was there some like where does that come from?
I don't know. This is going to make me think a little bit because I think my dad is somebody who is like this, I would say. My mom is a little bit of a gypsy, belly dancer, linguist, polyglot, sort of the embodiment of creativity. I mean, she's like written a book that's all poetry, and you know what I mean? So I think that from her, maybe I get a little bit of the try lots of different things, but also, channel it in some way. And then from my dad, maybe I get more of the execution. He's more of the sort of, I wouldn't say like a type A or something, but just that he's one who does have that kind of mindset around, we have goals, we accomplish them, we move towards these things, how to actually put an idea into practice. So I think that maybe that combination of my mom being the idea generator, and she has all of these, she can literally make a flower out of Tootsie Rolls. I mean, she's phenomenal. So she has the ideas, and then you have the execution. And I think that there's kind of those two things maybe mixed inside of me, which I'm grateful for, because it's helped me to kind of be in the position that I am today, which I'm so happy about and proud of. So
And I could definitely see how you've gotten like the best of both worlds there.
exactly, yeah.
After law school,
Hmm.
because I did get the order mixed up, but after law school, then you go to film school.
Right.
And
Yes.
I get it that you had like, you had some funding left over from the GI Bill, I
Yes.
take it, that
Hmm.
allowed you to do that. But even though it allowed you to do that, why that?
Yeah, good question too. So what ended up happening is that in order to, it wasn't the program that I was going after, it was the time, because I only had 11 months and 20 days left of GI Bill to use. So I couldn't do really like a 2-year program or like a 4-year program or something. So I needed something that was going to be something that would actually be useful to understanding the business of the industry that I was practicing law in. So that was, something around film, or, you know, people who are executive producers or whatever else. So understanding, and one piece of that is that I took an entertainment law class in law school where the teacher said, law is only one part of practicing entertainment law. It is, you have to understand the business and how deals are actually made. And so with that, I kind of took that and ran and said, okay, well, I have this free tuition that I can use for school. Kind of the stars aligned that there was a program that was, international film business that teaches you about what is a producer, like how are films financed, what are co-productions, like all of the different things around treaties and da da da. And so all of those different pieces, how does it, how to budget a film, all of the different pieces, what is the package, and all the pieces of like, what is the business of putting a film together. Even though I understood sort of like the law side, I wanted to understand the business side. So that was kind of the decision there. And I also didn't have any kids, and I wasn't married at the time. And so, well, I'm not married yet either yet, but so at the time I was just not married, like no kids. And I saw it as a really good opportunity for me to start my own practice so that I could scale the number of clients that I took up or down, depending on my workload for school, that I could take or reject clients based on whether they'd be willing to work with me while I was completely virtual, since I was living in London, but I'm only licensed in California. So I feel like those different pieces came together to say, this is the right program, this is the right place and the right time, even though it was October 2020 in the middle of the height of COVID. So, but it ended up working out perfectly. And I think that those were kind of the little decisions that I made was, this is the right time. I'm already in the headspace of studying. I don't have to take a break and work and then come back to studying later. I don't have a family to worry about right now. I can travel on my own. So there were a lot of different factors. And the biggest piece was that it was, one, going to be teaching me about the business of entertainment. And the second was going to be the length of the program, because it fit within the window of the time that I had left for free education.
And that's a really good decision. I mean, to me, it speaks to empathy. It's wanting to
Mhm.
understand the point of view of the clients that you'll be representing.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely did that. And it really taught me sort of, it actually led to kind of my interest in legal technology a little bit more as well, because how it happened there was, after I graduated from law school and I knew I was going to be going to my master's degree, there was an opportunity to participate in an incubator program called Access to Law Initiative through my school. and they were kind of helping sole practitioners, to learn like, how do you get an EIN, and like, what is Clio, and here's a free year of Lexis, things like that. So they really just help you as somebody who decided to open your own practice to get off the ground and sort of understand. They give you like checklists and things like that. But also they give you, information about different programs that are coming up specifically for you. So I was able to participate in Passport to Practice, their first year that they did that, 2020. And simultaneously, they had Bucerius Law School out of Germany was doing Legal Tech Essentials, with Dirk Harding and Dan Katz. So I'm sure you know him as well. And so I got to be a part of their first year. And that's how I met Dorna Molini, who is the founder and CEO of Gavel. She was doing a presentation about, at the time, Documate, and giving us access to student accounts, and I got to go in and play with it. And this is literally, 4 years ago. And this was my introduction to legal technology after I had already graduated from law school. But it made it to where, because I was sort of influenced by these different presentations about legal technology, I ended up doing my dissertation and my master's degree on how we can use legal technology to help film students and early career filmmakers get access to legal services fast and free while still paying lawyers at a competitive rate. So that was my, it was a pitch deck that I put together, and I put together how you would create this business model and how you would monetize it and so on and so forth, and how you would pass points between sort of advertisers, and then you'd have, or companies, and then you'd have the students or filmmakers who need the legal advice, and you have the lawyers, and how this ecosystem of different people in this value exchange would operate. What would they charge for it? What would it look like? I designed sort of an app around it. And so that was sort of the manifestation of my influence from that summer of getting to learn more about legal technology.
Wow, how it all comes together.
I know. And I know you know these names. I mean, these are people who, now I get to have them as friends, or, people that we collaborate with. And this was me as a student or recent graduate, 4 years ago. And now I'm doing the presentations that Dorna used to do to teach me.
Yeah.
So it's very full circle.
The dissertation that you're talking about, that was at the
Mhm.
film school?
Yes,
Interesting, because essentially like what you're putting together is like a pitch deck for like almost a legal tech type product
exactly.
within the context of film school.
Yes.
How did you how did you
Yeah.
pull that
How did
off
I
with
do
your
that?
professor? Yeah.
Good question too. So essentially what happened is you get to choose what your topic is for your dissertation, and then you get a mentor and an academic supervisor type of thing. So I had to pitch my idea. Actually, originally, what I was going to do was an international copyright comparison tool created on Gavel. So I was going to say, I was going to consolidate all of the copyright laws in the universe and sort of like put them into one app, you could say, and say like, oh, we're trying to register in the United States, and like, we're interested in sort of like, this is what we're trying to register, and blah, blah, blah. So I was trying to think about that and how that would be useful to film students who are international, if they wanted to, protect their student films, or a first-time filmmaker wanting to understand what copyright issues were related to their first film, things like that. And so I just kind of pitched this idea. The academic supervisor approved it, and then we kind of let it mold into what it became, which was this idea for this app. But yeah, it really came down to the way that I was able to use my lawyerly persuasion skills to say, hey, like, they knew the whole time that I was a lawyer already, and that I had a little bit of a different way in. And so remember, this particular course is around people who want to be producers or executive producers. So they're the people who would find the money and the investors to create, to make a project happen. So I wasn't learning like how to be a director or like acting or something like that. It was a little bit more of the executive producer level. So we were learning about like the laws around this, or how you would go about, forming a co-production if you were going to do something between, if a UK, filmmaker wanted to do something with 10 cents, things like that. So So there's a little bit more room for me to pitch something like that. And it was very exciting because I also got to work with, as my supervisor, someone who I ended up working with after, and was my first job in legal tech after school.
Wow, I'm sure that it was no small part due to your charisma and
Oh, thank
convincing
you.
them.
Thank you so much. No, I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Well, one thing I want people that are either listening or watching to definitely not lose sight of is, and it comes out in everything that you're sharing with us, is that these different experiences that we have, like it may seem, because sometimes lawyers were trained about getting into something like one particular practice
Hmm.
area and then going like 10 miles deep. And there's
Exactly.
definitely a place for that.
Hmm.
But there's also a place for having broad life experiences that,
Exactly.
yeah, that one can draw from and like find a thread that
Hmm.
informs all of it. And
Yeah.
you've definitely found that.
I appreciate that. And also I would like to highlight a mentor of mine who I did my post bar with, and also was a law clerk with, Kayla Jimenez of USIP Attorneys. She was a huge motivation for me and inspiration, because when I would work with her in the office, she would like take a break and like paint a portrait, or she had like an easel and paint in the office, just sort of like, whenever she needed a little brain break and she just needed to take a second and like walk away from work for a second, she would paint or read a book or whatever. And then she would also talk about how she spent like 3 months in Italy and like did an art course. And you're just like, that could be part of your life as a lawyer, not like chained to your desk and having to work 10 million hours. And so I think that she probably doesn't even realize how much she influenced me as a mentor. So I really appreciate her, and showing the way that it could be that you could have fun and work hard and be creative and have other interests and travel and kind of creating this life. She owns different houses, and so she just showed kind of a way forward. And I hope for myself that I get to kind of show a little bit of a way forward as well. That I think in one of your podcast episodes, you mentioned like, that alternative legal roles is now sort of just a legitimate path, like legal ops or a legal tech startup entrepreneur is just a path that you can take now as a lawyer. And I feel like that's really exciting. So I hope that, my story is a little bit, inspirational to someone out there who's listening, about how you can evolve as a person, that you can go from, thinking that you're going to be in the FBI to spending time in the military to help you pay for that, for law school and pay for education, and finding creative ways to support yourself when you don't have the financial backing of, other people in your community. Um, and yeah, and just kind of taking advantage of everything that's free. I was like, passport to practice is free for us. Okay, yes. Modern lawyer is only, they had like a modern lawyer course that you could take, and it was, for us, it was like $35. And we're like, yes. Legal tech essentials is free, and like, 6-week course or something for free. I was like, thank you. So anything that I could see that I was sort of interested in that was free, I would just go and I would just take advantage of it. So allowing that to kind of shape me as a person really 100% led to where I am right now.
I'm sure your story will be inspirational, because it is.
I appreciate that.
Um, and it is extremely important for us when we're, even for me now, as in my 50s now, it's still important to see positive role models of people that have gone before, and
Hmm.
know that it's possible. It makes it possible, right? It
Right.
feels like if they could do it, I could do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I got to be a little bit more of that in my role for the past year and a half before I became the head of legal innovation. So for the past year and a half, I've been the global ambassador to law schools for Gavel. So as I mentioned, I was kind of delivering the presentations that Dorna delivered to me that made me interested in legal technology in the first place, and that had led to this whole branching off of my life path. So I feel like that has been really good for me to be able to lead, you know, have law students kind of see what I've been doing, to see that there's different paths that you can go down, there's different opportunities, that they can be the change now that they want to see in the world, but also just like in the legal industry. Because I will tell you that like one of the things that I was very afraid of when I became a lawyer was the workload, and feeling like if I tried to get a job at a big law firm, that I would be having to sacrifice my sanity, my mental health, my time, my family, all these different pieces. I was willing to do it for, a particular amount of time when I was like studying for the bar exam, and I would just turn my phone off for 10 hours a day and be like, I'm not talking to anyone, I'm not available. But for the rest of your life, that feels a bit hard. So what I want to show, and I think, one of the things that you kind of mentioned in your podcast too, is around this idea of like, what is our like motivation? What's driving us? And I think one of the biggest pieces for me is to show that there's a way to have a life that's not fully just your work. And I know that like it might sound like a weird position for me to say that as somebody who's not practicing law anymore, but I also am observing our customers at Gavel and the lives that they're able to lead. And there's literally a lawyer on the beach. I mean, I know that that's a Facebook group, so shout out to them, but literally like Dennis Doss of Doss Docs and Doss Law, he lives in Cabo for 2 months plus out of the year and runs his law practice and has his side revenue business with Doss Docs, built on Gavel. And so I just want to show that there's other ways that you can live your life that doesn't involve you, only doing work too many hours per week. So that kind of piece around like mental health, attorney balance, health, life balance, I feel like that's a really important piece to me as well.
So let's talk a little bit about your new role. And
Okay.
so as a head of legal innovation at Gavel, it sounds to me like, you're definitely getting out there and spreading the word as you're just as you just were saying right now, to lawyers about how they can free themselves from the shackles of their, regular practice or what they've come to expect of the practice of law to something that's much more liberating. So
Yeah. Well said.
yeah, share that a little bit about how you're doing that on a day-to-day basis and maybe some examples or experiences that stand out for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So my biggest thing is that when I was interviewing for the position, our CTO Pierre, he said, strip away all of the, we need this OKR and we need to hit this revenue goal or whatever else, strip that away. Your job is to inspire lawyers about what's possible in this shifting legal industry. That's it. Like, that's your job. Your job is to help people understand what's possible. So I can do that through things like this, where I'm appearing on different podcasts or doing joint webinars, focusing on partnerships, trying to help people in different legal communities, be they Facebook groups or, on school or different lawyer clubs or whatever else, to help them understand and kind of find the access to the people who are not really hearing this message, or they're starting to hear it, but they want to know more. I want to find those opportunities to talk about what people are doing, show different case examples about what people are doing. Like I mentioned with Dennis, who we're doing a joint webinar with DocuSign actually coming up in May. So I feel like that's going to be really important to just showcase the people who are doing it right now and to show that it really is possible. So my job is just to show what's happening and inspire people to kind of also pick up the gavel and go forward and to try it themselves. Do you like how I wrapped that up in a little bow?
Yeah, that was a good one. That was a good
Pick
one.
up the gavel.
Gonna have to have that as an excerpt on
Yes.
LinkedIn.
I love
Um,
it.
well, as you know, I've been an admirer of Dorna's for some time, and Gavel, and
Mm-hmm.
Gavel and Dorna have been recognized by the American Legal Technology
Yes.
Awards. And
Hopefully
I
again
love,
this year.
yeah, knock on wood. Um, and I've also been extremely impressed by the outreach that you've been doing, like the velocity really of yours and Gavel's like outreach has been really inspiring. Um, and I think that, what you've outlined about taking concrete examples
Mm-hmm.
of lawyers like actually implementing it and getting results that are tangible that you could share with people is really compelling. So like
Mm-hmm.
the more that you all can share of that, I think that's a great way to get the point across.
I appreciate that. And also I think one thing I would mention is that we're not trying, at least my style coming into my role now is not going to be, we just want to show you demo of our tool. We really want to focus on how do we actually help you? So for example, the webinar I'm going to be doing with Dennis and DocuSign is not around this is what DocuSign does and this is what Gavel does and he uses both. What it really is this is what he was able to build as a side hustle by himself with one person helping him to maintain it for very low cost because both tools are not that expensive, and how he was able to grow an entire side business that also serves as a lead generation tool for his law firm, how he was able to do that in a short period of time and grow it so quickly. And so I feel like that's what we want to talk about is, like you said, showing the case studies and examples of what's possible to help inspire different lawyers to kind of take that path as well. And what I've noticed and what I'd like to fill the gap of is that piece around, okay, so I've built something and I'm an expert at this thing, but how do I make it make money for me? And I think that that's the piece that's a disconnect right now in the conversations that I've had is somebody will have built something, but they don't really know about like marketing because we don't really learn that in law school. We don't learn about the flywheel and attract, engage, delight. And we don't learn about CRMs, and we don't learn about, like why would you have a webinar funnel? All of the different pieces of business development, I think is really lacking in my observation. So I would love to help show some examples of how people have built something on Gavel and with DocuSign or whatever else, what other tools, and show how that has actually made them money and given them a better life. Those are the two pieces I really want to focus on.
I just had a crazy idea with I heard you saying that, talking about that was, what if like you had a segment that was almost just like focusing on the tangent, like how it's affected their lifestyle. Like he's in Cavill,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So like just like a day on the boat or like whatever it is,
Yeah.
like showing the fruits of the labor,
Yeah.
right?
I love that. And also like how quickly, he's able to do that. That it doesn't have to be this thing that, oh, in 10 years, I'll be able to have my boat in Cabo. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? I think that's a big thing for me as well.
yeah.
And the ambition of it is really inspiring as well. Specifically, I know I keep mentioning Dennis, but he's just a very good example of this. Right now, it's a 6-figure side hustle that he's grown in a very short time, but his ambitions are to make it a $1 million per month venture. I mean, we're talking not just some little bit of side income. We're talking about a massive source of income. And so I feel like it's inspiring to see somebody who's actually doing that and then it's actually achievable and it's not just so fancy words or a pipe dream of like, oh, we want to fill your head with grand ideas. It's like, this is somebody who's actually doing this right now. And that's what I want to show. And he's going to do the DocuSign webinar on the beach, like in his boat.
Okay. Yeah, that does sound like a pretty massive income opportunity there.
Yeah.
If you can even hope to get to that level, that's amazing.
I want his life, definitely.
So this kind of ties in a little bit to empathy because
Mm-hmm.
one thing I want to touch on is that, on the one hand, lawyers hear a lot about, efficiency, automation, that's going to make your life better, all this
Mm-hmm.
stuff. I do know that, from my own experience too, is that the other side that's talking to them in their head when they hear this is, well, is this going to actually end up disconnecting me from my clients? Like, is it going to be
Right.
right? The counter argument, the sales objection that we get
Mm-hmm.
about, well, the handshake is really important, the eye contact,
Mm-hmm.
and all of that is important. How do you think to best preserve, that
Mm-hmm.
sense of empathy as a lawyer, as a practitioner with clients while still using, tools to automate? Like how do you
Yeah.
walk that line?
I think this is a very important question because a lot of the law and practicing the law is your relationships and your connections with your clients and your ability to, work with you for a long time rather than it being a one-time transaction. It's something that when they have another issue come up similar to that, they come back to you because you've built a relationship with them. So I would say that there's kind of maybe two pieces that I would say to this. The first one is especially maybe like an entertainment law is a very good example, is that one is very still like you're very close to your client because, you're counseling them on maybe very big deals and it's maybe you're their lawyer, like one of two clients that you have. So you're very like tightly connected with them. Because you do all of their film deals and you do all these different pieces. But I would say that there's still opportunities there for those ones that are very high touch. You could still automate parts of that, but have the second part of what I'm going to say is have high personalization in the automation tools that you use. So for example, Gavel allows you to pull a variable that was previously entered and put it anywhere you want, anywhere in the workflow. So that could be, for example, like, thanks, Mary, for filling that part out. Let's move on to this section. Maybe you add in videos, maybe into your workflows. Maybe you add a chat functionality so that the person can feel very connected to you, where you always have a customer service agent available to answer questions as needed. But maybe it also helps to pull away from maybe like phone calls or sort of some of those questions that can be answered, maybe anticipating concerns and answering questions ahead of time, like anticipating counter arguments type of thing that we learn as lawyers. So maybe, for example, you provide additional resources outside of direct legal services. Maybe you provide courses for your clients that are free or even serve as an additional revenue stream, because this is you talking directly to them and saying, this is how, walking them through the process, understanding that maybe somebody who's a millennial who wants to create a will, for example, who's like never done that before. Maybe you have a course on wills for millennials and you talk about how, directly to their issues. And, you have within that course different parts where they can use Gavel to generate their documents along the way. And those feed into DocuSign and can be electronically signed, or they need to be notarized, so on and so forth. So whatever the case may be, I just feel like what we talked about creativity, I think we can find creative ways to use automation while still having high touch feelings of personalization. With maybe they have a client portal that says when they open it up, it says, good afternoon, Tom, how are you today? Like, here's your agenda that I need you to accomplish. These are the 5 things I needed to do so that we can get your will squared away. Whatever the case may be, I feel like there is a way to have personalization without it being like your one-to-one time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes total sense. And I think sometimes when lawyers have those misgivings, they're also missing like the forest for the trees, because there's hundreds, if not thousands, of clients that they won't be able to have because they're not using tools like this.
Exactly.
And if they want to spread the
That's a great
wealth,
point.
if they want to spread the wealth of their knowledge and their expertise and earn those additional fees as well, they have to find some way to scale. And Gavel's a perfect example of that.
Exactly. Right.
Well, I'd like to ask you a little bit now about the future, because, is there anything that really excites you about the future of legal tech? It could be AI, since that's what everyone is talking about right now, or something
Right.
else. But is there a project or a goal that you have in the next
Yeah.
short time?
So I think my biggest goal personally is to see the fire catch. Like, I feel like we're still in sort of the early adopters. Some people are still learning what document automation is at all. I just went to a webinar about how to use Microsoft Word as a lawyer. And so I'm just excited for the fire to catch around the different pieces that can help lawyers in these different aspects, like, with AI, like you mentioned, or document automation, or I think what's more exciting is that piece around the legal productization and the ability for the implementation of these different tools to increase the access to justice for the middle class. So in my particular case, I have to ask myself, could I afford to hire one, even though I make a good salary, right? And so me being in that realm of, could I afford to just drop $9,000? Maybe not, because I'm still new to my job. But I'm excited to see people to start creating tools using these different tools, AI or Gavel or whatever else, that allow me as the person who needs to consume these services, such as immigration. In that space, I have a partner who lives in London. We need to get him over to America after we get married or to get married. And so the advice there is quite expensive, but maybe if we use some different tools, which I've seen some on the market already around, maybe we bring the price from $9,000 to have them apply for me to $600 for me to do it myself. That might be something that I can afford. And who gets my business? That person who made it in my range and understood me. We talked about empathy. If they understand how much money I'm making, what kind of disposable income I have, what my needs are, whether I like to travel, and whether I might have met someone abroad. I did. And so maybe I would need to be able to apply for his visa and all of those different pieces. And what could I actually afford to be able to make that happen? So I feel like that is where I'm really excited, is to see tools created for me as a consumer of those tools that people make. And I want them to be made by lawyers, and I want them to be made by subject matter experts. And that's what we're trying to do at Gavel, is put the tool in the hands of the people that are the subject matter experts and licensed attorneys, because I have worked for legal tech companies where nobody in the executive group is a lawyer, and we're having to hire lawyers as consultants, which is fine, but I would rather see those tech businesses built by lawyers.
One of the points you made that really like resonated with me is that empathy, it also includes financial empathy,
Right.
right? Like,
exactly.
Meeting people where they're at with what they can
Hear
afford.
me?
Yeah, it's very important, and a lot of that gets missed. So I want to ask you, with people out there, they might be just getting out of law school, and or they might be in law school right now, and they're thinking about the different options they have of pursuing their passion for the law, but they also happen to be creative, or maybe they're not creative, they're just doing the straight ahead law school thing, but they really should be thinking about how to incorporate creativity. Since you are a great example of combining those two worlds, what would be some advice that you would give to them?
Right. I think it goes to what I said a little bit earlier, which was I had my radar up for opportunity free, right? And there's tons of stuff that you can attend for free. Go to webinars and network with everyone you can see on the participants list, and then ask them, what do they like their job? What are they doing? What does their day look like? And I think one of the biggest pieces of advice that I would give to any student is to start with what you want your life to look like and work backwards, instead of what job do you want to have, right? So I feel like, do you want to be the one who's on the boat in Cabo enjoying the sunshine where the rest of us are in our offices working on Zoom? Or, or are you perfect? I have a friend who works at DLA Piper, and she's perfectly happy billing 12 hours a day. And like, that's what she likes, privacy, cybersecurity law or whatever. And that's completely okay too. I think that's another thing I would mention is, I went to a yoga class recently. I know Patrick will appreciate this because I know he has like a yoga studio or whatever. So one of the things they say is like, keep your eyes on your own mat, right? And so it's like one of those things where you're like, don't compare your path with like everyone else's path and where they are. I think there's a place for kind of like lifting your head above and like looking around and seeing what people are doing, but not necessarily saying like, oh, that's the only way to do it, because that person say with that, I'm saying like, focus on your own path, but pay attention to what's happening in the industry and participate and engage in all of these resources that people are providing for you that are free or very low cost. Take courses, reach out on LinkedIn. I think that that's a really valuable thing to do, is to just start to look for the opportunities to start engaging, even if you don't end up going down that path.
Well, it's fabulous advice. And let me ask you the question I ask, all of my guests, which is what makes it worthwhile for you at the end of the day?
Yes. So I think what makes it worthwhile for me is there's kind of a selfish reason, and then there's like an altruistic reason. So the selfish reason is that I feel that I'm in my genius zone, as Gay Hendricks calls it in The Big Leap. I'm sure you probably read him. Amazing. I feel that I kind of went through this path of like, how they have the 4 zones of, there's like the zone of incompetence, the zone of competence, the zone of excellence, and the zone of genius. And I feel like I've just kind of gone through each of those stages to now I feel like I'm in my groove. I know where my flow is. I feel engaged with what I'm doing and very happy and excited. So from a personal standpoint, I feel very fulfilled with what I'm doing, that I get to help showcase what other people are doing and inspire other people to, have ideas and spark different interests and change lives that way. And then the altruistic side of me is that, the whole vision, we go over our vision every week at Gavel. The vision is to make law accessible universally for the clients, and doing that by helping lawyers understand how they can increase efficiency so they can reduce costs and overhead, and how they can provide these new solutions and offerings to their clients so that people like me can actually afford legal services if I needed it. So I feel like that vision is really important to me. So I align from like a personal genius zone perspective, and then also from a mission and vision perspective of what we're trying to do is actually to go like one step beyond the lawyer and actually help people in the community, including myself, access the legal advice and services that we need by helping lawyers understand how to help us as clients, how to deliver services to us that we can afford, and how to do that in a way that still makes them money and provides for all of the student loans that we all have. So I hope that answers the question.
Oh, it definitely answers it, and it's a very inspiring message, you know. I think ultimately we all are here for the service of the people and exercising their legal rights, and hopefully
Mm-hmm.
ensuring that we all have our rights protected and can act on that. So
Absolutely.
I just want to thank you so much for your time, Brittany.
Of course.
I mean, I've learned a ton. I know that people listening in have probably learned a lot about uh, different paths that we could take in our lives, bring it together with a creative vision and be
Mm-hmm.
able to act on that.
Absolutely.
So
Thank you so much for your time as well and for having me.
yeah, thank you. And for people that are watching or listening
Yeah.
and want to follow up with you and keep in touch, how can they do that?
Definitely reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm there all the time. So reach out to me on LinkedIn, Brittany L. Hernandez, Brittany L. Hernandez. You can also email me at brittany@gavel.io. So I'm always happy to respond to, like I said, if anyone just wants to chat through my life journey, or if they're interested in doing collaborations or partnerships, I'm very open to that. And that's my whole goal and role as head of legal innovation, is to spread the word. So if if you want to have me on your podcast or have me speak at a conference, then do reach out as well.
And thank you all for watching and tuning in to LawDroid Manifesto, the podcast with Tom Martin and Brittany Hernandez. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Thank you so much for watching the latest episode of the LawDroid Manifesto podcast. To keep in the loop about upcoming episodes, please subscribe to LawDroid Manifesto and you'll get notified. Thanks for watching. See you next time.